All right, Dad. Well, unpacking motives in job, business, vocation. What do you refer to when we're talking about our work? What's your leading term these days?
Well, it is work, but I give that a broader meaning
Okay.
than what a lot of people give it, where they just assume, how do you make money?
Yeah.
To me, work has a much deeper meaning than that. So
Well,
it's,
there's a great lead in right there. So, number one, unhealthy, errant, unproductive motive. And maybe that's not even fair to say that, but the motive that we often go into life with. So we come out of our home and our upbringing, school and yada, yada. And then it's, time to go support ourselves and we go get a job. I mean, the vast majority, even if we look at the percentage of people in America, in the world, whatever, how many employees, how many have a business or entrepreneurs, I assume that the vast majority start off with a job of some sort. So we go into that, and you just said it, money is primarily that initial motive. That's the reason. Why are you getting a job? That's why. And would you say that that is okay? That's valid. That's a good motivator. Or would you say that, man, that's what's derailing so many of us so quickly?
well, it is. I think you're right on that assumption. It derails a whole lot of people. I remember working with the guy one time. He was fresh out of college and he had gotten a job with an insurance company. So every day he would put on a suit and tie, go to the office. They absolutely loved him. He thought he was going to have his head exploded because he hated everything about it. I said, man, who sold you this bill of goods? And he says, what do you mean? I thought that's what you do. He said, I prolonged going to college for 7 years because I knew I was going to one day be confronted with the reality. Then I had to quit having fun and go get a job. And I said,
Ouch.
who sold you this bill of goods, man? I said, what'd you do in college? Well, gee, I snowboarded and did all these things. Well, worked with him, and he actually went to Boulder, Colorado, near where you are, and he was designing snowboards. So this
Mhm.
dude could be coming down, at 2 a.m. on a moonlit night, down off the hill on a snowboard. And it was such a relief and such a revelation for him to think that he could do something that productively generated income for himself that wasn't miserable.
Yeah.
He thought it came one and the same. Work means you have to be responsible, do something you hate, so you create an income. Wow, that's a really short-sighted path for so many people.
Well, so I'm curious, especially if we look at the initial embarking towards our vocation in a job in a business. We're generally coming out of some kind of generally always coming out of some kind of upbringing where we have examples set before us and probably expectations. So just to what you said there, back, man, this was stark to me back when I was doing a good amount of coaching. I had a couple guys in particular. It was during so many months, but a kind of a concise period of time where I had these two guys come and they were both saying, man, I just know there's something more. I'm doing this job. I know there's something more. Both of them cited having come from families where their parents, or at least their father, had worked the same job for 40 years, kind of a factory deal. Went in, clocked in, they respected him. He put food on the table, but there was no joy, no care, no interest, no nothing. It was just a job. That was their only example. And so even though they had this spark of, man, I think there's something more, they had no real reference point for it. And I'll tell you, I felt incompetent, and I realized at the time I don't need to work with people like this. I didn't have a connection point with them to help them kind of think beyond that. So when you talk about that example, I mean, I wonder what that guy, what it is, was that the example that he had set before him, that work is just this thing you go slog out for a buck.
Yeah, it was. It was. So again, it was a family pattern. And we see that a lot. We see where people pursue things. If mom was a teacher, you're likely to be a teacher. If she was a nurse, nurse. If dad worked at a factory, we see those generational kind of expectations. Today, where people are, it really is a blessing in many ways, because when I talk to high school kids today, a lot of them can't describe what their mom or dad do. It's not
Oh,
as clear. They go do this. So the kind of work that we have today is much harder to describe. What that means is kids are coming into the workplace then with more of a clean slate.
huh.
So they have more options. that should be a positive in that they have the opportunity to look inward first and to find work that is more an authentic fit rather than just fulfilling the generational expectations. That should be the case. So it allows people to find things that are more true to themselves if they in fact take the opportunity to do that and look inward first.
Well, you saying that we tend to, if your mom's a teacher, you become a teacher. I looked at some stats, just some Google, it wasn't some scientific survey, for a show a couple weeks ago that showed, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but it was something to the effect of doctors' kids are 20% more likely to become doctors. Lawyers' kids is like 15% more likely to become
Sure.
lawyers. Obviously that, works in my case. How many entrepreneurs' kids are likely to become entrepreneurs? I never knew anything different.
Yeah. And
Uh,
even for, my grandkids, I mean, I know we spoil them to be content with the general model for work. Now, hopefully, they are allowed to see the full spectrum and still find where they fit well. But you're right. I mean, what we see is the first model that we have open our eyes to, okay, what's possible? Maybe I ought to do this.
Well, speak to the money real quick, Dad. I mean, I know this is your area of expertise, but when we go after, I know that this is elementary, we would think, but as we so often see, that elementary common sense is no longer common. That when we go after that job, like your initial snowboard guy who goes into insurance, and we think insurance, man, it's a good, solid job. You can make good money. You can become wealthy doing insurance. So he's going after it, for money. But that statistic on just countering the idea of, if I go do the thing that's fun, I'm going to live on rice and beans. Just
Right.
that, as opposed to, yeah, yeah. I see you smiling. Just go ahead and hit that aspect of, no, we go into the job with good opportunity, with a good upside, because the thing that we want to do, that we do have joy, care, interest in, is going to be less income.
There's so much wrapped into what you just laid out there, Kevin. A lot of us have theological background that makes us expect that work is going to be something distasteful.
Right.
They pull out that early scripture in Genesis where God says, hey, because of this, work is going to be a pain in the neck. You're going to earn your living by the sweat of your brow. Well, they
Mm-hmm.
don't realize that 3 chapters later, God removed that curse, but somehow we get wrapped up in that. And people, even who are not real faith-based, somehow still have the assumption that work is just a bitter pill. The whole goal is to figure out a way in your life so you don't have to work. Thus, work, the meaning of work implies something negative that I don't want to do.
Yeah.
That's a horrendous overview of work. Work is the most fulfilling, joyful, meaningful spending of our time that we could possibly come up with if it's done in the right way. And when we find people who enjoy their work, retirement loses its appeal. Retirement in our culture implies as soon as I can quit this stinking thing that I do called work and do what I really want to do, then life will be wonderful. What a novel thought. What if you figured out how to do what you really enjoy doing and it addresses the integration of your talent, your passion, and generates money? You don't want to quit that. You don't want to figure out how to stop doing that. You want to continue doing that. That's why we see people who move into their 80s and 90s who continue to work long after they need any money generation, but they're doing something that gives them purpose and
Right.
meaning.
Can we say the stats line up? I'd like them to. It would help this argument to say that those who do enjoy, who are in work that they enjoy, care about, have a passion for, find purpose in, make more money
Oh,
long
yeah.
term.
Oh, yeah. And that's the irony of what you alluded to a little bit earlier. People assume, well, yeah, I really enjoy music or art or snowboarding or biking. But if I did that, then my family would have to live on beans and rice. We'd always be poor. But it doesn't work that way. When people move into something, that's why I would rather help somebody grow dandelions if that's what they're passionate about than to try to talk them into being a computer programmer because we know there are good jobs there.
Right.
No, they're more likely to make money growing dandelions if that's their passion. And I have here on the wall right in front of me, Kevin, this painting. I know you've seen it, but done by a young man who came to me as a pastor. And he was doing something that he saw as very godly, but he was miserable and knew that. He was frustrated. Came to me. He was eking out a living. They were paying him peanuts, as they do beginning pastors. He was working as a night clerk at a hotel during the week just to try to keep the lights on in his house. And I said, why are you doing this? And he was really taken back. It was like, well, this is the most godly thing anybody could do. I said, no, it's not. You're an imposter. You're trying to be something you're not. What is it that when you're doing it, you really come alive?
Wait, can I
What is it
answer
when
that?
you're
Can I answer that? I know the story.
okay?
Painting,
Yes,
painting. Yes. Love the
absolutely.
story.
He said he'd go into a room in his house, lock the door, put on Beethoven or Mozart, and he would paint.
Awesome.
But how are you going to do that? I mean, what do we know about artists? Starving artists. So we have that kind of slogan out there. If you're going to do art, you're going to starve. No, if that's your passion, then do it with excellence. And today, of course, he makes, 10 times the money he ever dreamed of making as a pastor, well known as an artist, and does amazing art, real abstract pieces that are always music themed. But that's the thrill of moving into something where it embraces your passion, not, okay, I'm going to keep my passion for something I try to squeeze in a weekend because that's my hobby, but then I have to do something I dislike. And the irony is, a lot of people are concerned that they're going to destroy the enjoyment of their hobby if they allow that to become a source of their income.
Man, I'll never forget when we moved out here to Colorado in the mountains. I had somebody at some point say, "Man, I adore it out there as well, but I don't ever want to move out there because I'm afraid it would take off the joy of that. So I'm going to live here where it sucks and just come out and visit it and have that highlight instead of actually living there because it might dilute my joy." Which I get to some degree, man. That's a poor perspective. You mentioned the starving artist, and not that we have to go down that road, but the thing that does occur to me when people say that is here they are doing their whatever job, usually as an employee, they go over here and try to make it as an artist. And the problem is not their art and having to live on beans and rice, because the problem is that they just became a business owner and they suck at that and they never laid that out. If they would understand that, no, you're not a starving artist, aren't starving artists because there's not money and opportunity in art. It's because now you're a business owner and you got to take that into account, which is why I think we see some of the best artists ever never come out with their art because they never figured out that if I'm doing this now, I am a business person and I've got to learn business.
Well, and that's true, whether it's art or speaking or coaching or having a
Right.
yard business or a pool service. Yeah, you have to move beyond just the thing that you most enjoy doing and recognizing, it's like with coaches. We want to teach coaches both the psychodynamics of coaching and the business of coaching.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're going to move into what you most enjoy, if it's riding bikes or mowing yards, then what is the economic model? Because I talk often about the three-legged stool that has to blend talent, passion, and money.
Yeah.
If you have talent and passion, but no money, you have a hobby. I mean, we have a lot of people in Nashville, Tennessee, who are really gifted musicians. They really are. They're passionate about it. They're very talented, and they live in cardboard boxes under bridges because they've never figured out how to create an economic model. Well, that can be frustrating to people. So they think, well, I really enjoy this thing, but I've never figured out how to create an economic model with that. And so that's frustrating. So then they think, then again, well, it confirms their idea. Well, I need to do something that I don't enjoy, but at least it generates money. No.
Yeah.
How can we be creative? It's like with me being an author. We know that 95% of authors in America never make more than $40,000 a year. Well, that should be pretty discouraging to anybody who has any kind of financial goals at all. But to me, it wasn't. I immediately asked myself, how difficult could it be to put myself in the 5% of authors? I simply look at authors, see what they're doing, and do things they're not willing to do. And it very quickly opened up the opportunities where I could step into that 5% of authors who make more than 40,000 a year.
Yeah, you hit on a bunch of things there, that the talent and passion, and then having a financial model. When we look at business, I mean, I don't think this will surprise you, but it's a continuing revelation of mine that I don't enjoy business in and of itself. I don't enjoy talking about business. I don't enjoy business growth because I know some people who do. A lot of millionaires who love business and they're really good at business. I don't. It's a, I don't know if I should say it this far, but to some degree, it's a necessary evil. But I've got to figure out how to do that, to manage that, to accommodate that, so I can do the thing that I am passionate about, the thing that I have talent in, which I am doing today. But the business side is difficult. And I just want people to hear that. I think sometimes they think that they have to be this business whiz and then love business. No, but you do have to address it. And for me, that means delegating. That means hiring people and paying people to do those things, to keep track of the finances, to coach me in areas. And it really, even beyond coaching these days, I'm just trying to find somebody who'll just do it. Just take that and do that part so I can stick doing with what I do. But I am not a great, Terry told me that. My wife told me that one time. She said, honey, you're this, heralded businessman. You're not really good with business. I said, you're darn straight. Don't tell anybody, but you're right. I don't enjoy that part of it, but it has to be done so that I can, as Seth Godin would say, get my art out.
But there's a process by which you can do what you just described. And I think it bears leaning into it a little bit more. We do have to handle that in some way. But in Michael Hyatt's book, Free to Focus, he talks about these different levels of how you can take your business. I can take my business, just small businesses, and we can identify how we spend our time. There are going to be things in which we are incompetent. Refilling the toner. I just had a light come on my printer. Toner needs to be replaced. I can do that, but it's certainly not something I want to spend a lot of time doing. Then there are things where you are competent. Yeah, you can do it, but you could probably have somebody else do that equally as well. Things where you're excellent. All right, now we're moving into things that are a little more unique, things that keep the cash flow coming in. And a lot of people get trapped there. What we look for, though, what is your unique ability, or what I like to call your zone of genius, things that only Kevin Miller can do? That's where you want to spend your time. And then, so you identify those 4 areas of activities. The incompetent things, you want to eliminate those, somehow get those off your plate. The ones where you're competent, you want to delegate those. The ones where you're excellent, systematize those. And then the ones where your unique ability, you expand. So that's a great model to give us the comfort of knowing, okay, so I'm not great at accounting, at handling some of the details, at establishing what new software we need to use or whatever it is. I can systematize or delegate those things. So once I understand myself well enough, I can still have a fully functioning business by having people around me whose skills supersede my own in those areas. Yeah, so I can focus on what I do well, even if it's not the mechanics of the business itself.
Now you said that, and we're talking about business, though, to those who are employees and are want to be employees to some degree. I mean, that was or at least part of the message of Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week from so long ago, was that even as an employee, what can you do to offload, delegate, whatever, get yourself out of those things that other people can do that you're, as you said, competent or incompetent in, and just stay in that zone of genius. Now, I can't say I have experience on actually doing that, and especially in the way that he formulated that, but I appreciate the standpoint. And I know that you have had people that you have coached in an employee situation who were dissatisfied, who felt cramped in that, and you helped them go to their employer with a plan of saying, hey, how about this, with incredible results.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I've got some really glaring examples. Guy who was a TV marketing executive and really well thought of, just a super guy. He had decided that he needed to quit his job because he was no longer playing the cello. He was no longer involved in his kids' schools and all these things that he had given up. He was a biker and he wasn't biking anymore, and he needed to quit his job. And I'm like, okay, what are you going to move to? Well, there wasn't anything that was really clear. My proposal was, instead of him working the 100 hours a week that he was working currently, that he go to his boss and say, look, things have gotten really out of hand here. I'm not in my area of excellence any longer. Let me do just what I do really well for 40 hours a week. And let's get these other things off my plate. His boss says, I wondered when you were going to cry uncle. Huh. Let's do that. And he did that. I mean, he cut his workload in half. He was able to pick up those things in his personal life that gave his life meaning. And he realized he was in a perfect position. He didn't need to leave that. I've run into the same thing with I mean, cardiologists and anesthesiologists, high level medical people who have just allowed themselves to say yes to so much.
Yeah.
They're doing things that are not their unique zone of genius. Now, in regard to Tim Ferriss's, I mean, the implication of 4-hour work week is okay. I have a 40-hour job, so I'm going to offload everything that I'm responsible for, so I can sit around and drink mai tais, work 4 hours a week because I've offloaded everything to other people that I can pay less, so I still get the big salary, but and I'm living a life of leisure. I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking to reduce the time of productive work down to 4 hours a week at all. I love the fact that I can work in my zone of genius for increased amounts of time, but I'm not looking to reduce that down to zero at all because I do enjoy that. Again, it kind of comes back to it begs the question, what is the meaning of work? If you think work is something distasteful that you have to do, then you want to reduce it. If work is something that's fulfilling, meaningful, purposeful, and profitable, wow, I want to expand that.
That's I can't measure the value that I daily have of knowing that I'm going to wake up in the morning and be looking forward to my work. It grieves me to know that so many, we know the majority are not. It's the necessarily evil. And like you've talked about for decades, that we have more suicides or heart attacks or both on Mondays or Sunday nights, which is tragic. Going to this motive again with job, we've hit it some, but I just want to elevate it or lay it out there, the expectations. What are the expectations? And obviously money is a primary one, but what are the expectations? We talked a little bit about our upbringing. So a lot of people had parents or parental figures that brought them up that had expectations of what they would do going forward in a job, or they may have just developed those expectations themselves based on something they've been exposed to or whatnot. But again, as a primary motive of why are you doing this job, I think so often we just have these expectations that we haven't unpacked, which of course is so much of my point here at Motive, to go, okay, this is, if you ask the expectation, lay it out, to go, why do you have that? Is that something you authentically feel, desire, resonate with, agree with inside of yourself? Or is that just some expectation you got from, again, from wherever it is? And maybe it's not so important where it came from, but to audit, why do we go, the fact that we are going into so many jobs, vocational pursuits, just because of expectations that we haven't unpacked, we haven't taken ownership of.
Well, Meatloaf had a song years ago where it talked about essentially we look at life in the rearview mirror. And that's the way people look at their work a lot of times. They get out of school. Gee, you got to get out here and get a job. They get a job. They go to college. Okay, you need to do something in line with your major. They get a job. And all of a sudden they look up and it's 30 years later and they're like, why am I doing what I'm doing?
Yeah.
So they look at their work in retrospect rather than having a clear sense of what they're moving to. And then they hit that point where they come to work with me and they're looking at what they're coming from. Gee, all the negative, painful things about what they're coming from. So it just means that to put ourselves in the driver's seat, we need to do a little bit of introspection,
Yeah.
a little bit of planning, understanding how we are wired uniquely, what our unique skills and abilities are, our personality tendencies, our values, dreams, and passions. From those, we get a clear focus that we can really put ourselves in the driver's seat for, okay, what work, what kind of environment, what kind of work model fits me well and would allow me to thrive and be my best. It's very doable. These things are not so elusive that we have to just hope that we get the road to Damascus kind of experience for enlightenment or go sit in the middle of a desert for a month and hope for the lightning bolt. No, it's a process. You can do this. Anybody can do this and walk through to have more clarity and more fulfillment in what they're doing.
Well, looking at that again as a motive, when we talk about money as the leading one, I get the one that continues to surface for me is contribution. I like that word. What is my contribution? And I want to say unique contribution, but I don't want that to make it sound like you have to find this thing that nobody else is offering, which is impossible. So
Yeah.
if we can say just what's a better word? Your inherent contribution. I mean, what I am doing in bringing forth personal, I work at the personal development industry and I put out content, podcasting, an upcoming book and whatnot. I'm not the only one doing that. I'm not the only one with my content as a topic. Now, hopefully I have a unique flavor,
Yes.
a unique view. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can do that even if but when I wrote 48 Days to the Work You Love, was that the first book to help people really figure out how to get meaningful work, figure out what their passions were and apply that? And I mean, heavens no, you could walk into any bookstore and there's going to be 80 books there that address the same kind of topic. But I said, you can do this in 48 days. You don't have to wait until you get another degree, till you finish paying your student loan debt, till the kids graduate from high school. No matter where you are, you can starting today in 48 days, change your life dramatically if you create a plan and act on it. That's my unique overview of a very broad industry. Now, it doesn't have to be that. I mean, that was me, but anybody can do that. So you do have to find, what do you bring to the table that makes you the go-to person for something? Otherwise, you'll get lost in the sea of sameness.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be something never before revealed. Nobody ever has talked about this before. No, that's
Well, you were joking about it earlier. The next book that says the 7 never heard secrets on whatever, dude, that does not exist. And unless you just found an archaeological dig of something unique, it doesn't exist.
Yep.
You
It
talking
doesn't.
about that, your unique perspective, even there on, I want people to hear that on business, on finding work that you love. And you saying that you're not the first person. There's plenty of people who had done that, who were doing that, who are doing that. I also appreciate the relevance of your specific voice. I'm going to call it your flavor, because you're sitting here talking on this topic and I'm sure you know a list of other people who are. And the people who listen to you specifically for that have chosen you, resonated with you, because they connect with the fact that you came from the farm and you came from, Amish parents, and you came from an entrepreneurial perspectives and never had a job. And some people are going to look at that and they go, no, that doesn't speak to them. They want the person over here who came from corporate America in a suit and tie and a Ferrari and is speaking from a different perspective, and that's relevant too. That's what I see people don't realize is the power of their own story and flavor that people are going to resonate with, because somebody else is speaking on a similar topic, but from a perspective that they don't resonate with. I don't resonate with the suit and tie and Ferrari person. It just doesn't. I resonate more with, with what you came from, what we came from. And just that the relevance of that personal background is so strong, in addition to your perspective on the topic.
Well, and you have to be specific about who you are speaking to. I mean, Kevin, you're in the process of writing a book. I mean, the death knell to a book project is to tell the publisher, this book is for everybody.
Mm.
I mean, they will see that as red flag.
Shoot, let me send my publisher an email real quick. I got to correct that.
They will see that as red flag. That's so unrealistic.
Yeah.
Identify who is a likely candidate for your message. If you're speaking to everybody, you're speaking to nobody. The old Robert Kiyosaki kind of thing is, if you don't get any criticism, you're probably not doing anything that has any value. And his thing is, you ought to have a third of the people who love you, a third of the people who hate you, and a third who really just don't care. If you're doing that, you probably have a message that's getting some traction, and you can move forward with that. And a lot of people, cringe at that. They think, well, no, I just want to, speak to everybody, encourage everybody or whatever, or sell to everybody. That's hard to really carve out any kind of uniqueness in that.
On looking at this job and people going after it, something that's come to light to me more and more, and talking again to the motive, and that we so often go into a job for money. I would say, would it be fair to say status for the position? Hey, I'm going to be VP, manager, whatever that thing is. It sounds good. And we go out there, we do the job hunt, we find an opportunity, and we turn around and tell our spouse, our family, our friends, whatever, hey, I got a job. I'm getting paid whatever, $75,000. And I'm the senior, whatever, I'm the management, whatever. We look at that. And that's what the applause is. That's generally where we're going to get the support from everybody, the encouragement, good job. And we're going to feel that, I made it. And yet 60, how often does this happen? I'm going to say 60 days. You may say it's, less than that or whatnot, but how often do we find ourselves then into that job weeks, months later, absolutely discouraged because the commute, because the boss, because of the coworkers, because of the office with no windows, because of all these things that we so seldom audit before we go into a position. And again, we're looking at the money, the title, the opportunity, the benefits, the company car, whatever it may be. And we don't look at the reality of the day-to-day life. So I found myself telling my kids that, look, where are you going to be working? Where are you going to be sitting? Who are you sitting next to? Who are you going to be answering to for the most part? What's your office chair look like? I mean, all these things that, as you know, you can take the fanciest job, the biggest salary, and it'll be wrecked. And who cares 6 months from now if all those things are set aside? So again, looking at that motive, what's our reason for going after that and letting that money and title, is that fair to say, be those paramount without auditing the rest of what is the reality of work going to look like? And there's where we get the Dilbert comics and the office sitcoms and whatnot.
Well, fortunately, we have so many options today. I mean, the old days of you're defined by where you live and who your parents are and what kind of school you went to. I mean, those things just are non-relevant issues for the most part today. We have so many options to be so specific in what we do. We can choose. And if somebody's doing, even if you're looking for a traditional job, I mean, do a good job search in today's environment, you ought to have 4 or 5 job offers in a very short period of time. Then you can choose which one really fits me best. Which one do I really care about? So if you find yourself in a position where, gee, I dread the drive, I'm not crazy about the people I'm working with. And I was in a place yesterday, a little tropical cafe place that I like to eat. They have great veggie sandwiches and they have signs everywhere and applications laying out on the counter. The guy who owns it was there and one gal working with him. They were overwhelmed with people on the line for smoothies and inside. And the guy was, gruff and just blunt with me, even as a customer. And I thought, well, it's pretty clear why you're trying to find people to
Yeah.
work with. Nobody's going to want to work with you, dude.
Yeah.
But some of those things seem to be so self-obvious, whether you're wanting people to work with you or you to work with somebody else. I mean, your personality, your peace of mind, the gentle spirit that you bring to something can open doors that far surpass any kind of skills or credentials you might have. But there's so many options. It just makes me cringe when people complain about what it is they're doing, whether it's their own business they've created or a job that they have. It's like, really? Well, let's not be doing this 48 days from now. Let's figure out a way to change this.
And I want to pluck out some of the specifics around business, those who decide I want to go into business for myself, become an entrepreneur. But before that, just again, looking at the initial vocation, job, whatever that most people go into, lay out, just because I want to make it blatant, and I'll put it in the show notes, lay out what are the, if I can call them, healthy motives. Because when I first thought of that, I thought, what are you interested in? What are you curious about? What do you have expertise or experience in, as some of those things? But what would you give somebody, let's say a younger kid or somebody just going in and say, look, here's the filter of the relevant reasons why you would want to pick a certain job, career track, or whatnot.
We know that the primary motivation for most people early in the game, at least, is how can I make money? And that's such a short circuited kind of approach because money is a byproduct. I mean, you and I are in this space, information technology, writing, speaking, coaching, whatever, where it seems to be a little elusive. I never approach something by first calculating, okay, I want to make this much money. So now how can I back into that to make that happen? I first look at what is it that I can do that has unique value for people. So the easiest kind of overlay of this is you want to make $1 million? Tell me how you're going to help 1 million people.
Hmm.
That's the easiest way to look at it.
Contribute back to that contribution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So ask yourself, what is it that I can do that really has value for other people? How can I help other people? Now, that doesn't have to be some grandiose, change the world kind of thing. I mean, my yard guys were here this morning. I love these guys. They are amazing at seeing things that need to be done. I don't have to micromanage them and tell them, gee, I want you to blow the leaves off the driveway. boom, it's done. If there are weeds coming up somewhere, it's done. They are so good at doing that. I love the service they provide, and I'm happy to write that check every month because of what they're doing. So that may not seem like it's a real, and they're not entrepreneurs, they're employees, but they know that if they do good work that makes Dan Miller happy, they're going to get paid in a way that they've agreed to, and maybe have some new opportunities come along as a result of that. So you have to come down to that. What is it that I can do that would have value for somebody? Start with that. And then you ought to be able to come up with 20 possibilities. What would that look like? Could you find a job? If so, in what industry would you be excited? What kind of people do you want to be around? Are you more interested in working with people or with ideas? You know, you can be introverted, outgoing, no right or wrong, good or bad, but you ought to be able to have these indicators that help you see this is where I'm going to thrive. So it's that inward look again, skills and abilities, personality tendencies, value, dreams, passions. That ought to give you a clear focus. And it really, I consider that to be 85% of the process. 85% of the process of having the confidence that you're going in the right direction in your career or business comes from looking inward first. 15% is the application. Knowing what I know about myself, what are the kind of businesses, the kind of jobs where I could thrive and blend what I know about myself? 15%. But a lot of people jump to that too quickly and they don't take the internal look first. And thus, 6 months later, they're, as you described, they're frustrated, wondering, why did I do this?
You said, I love that perspective or question. Do I want to work with people or ideas? Because that sound, I could hear people saying like, well, gosh, you can't say not people, but that would be me. If you want me to flourish, let me go into a room by myself and work on an idea. I'm not the one to collaborate and work with other people. It's not my skill set. And I hope that's freeing for a lot of people to hear, but I'm very well aware of that. To put me in an arena where, yeah, like the cubicle office where everybody's talking and chatting, whatever, I won't get anything done. I'm a distraction waiting to happen. Put me somewhere where I can focus, give me an idea to chew on. That's where I'm great. So it's not with people. I think that's probably sounds bad to some folks, but man, I'm grateful that you laid that out.
Well, let's push into that a little bit because I know you speak to a lot of people who really are more entrepreneurial. They'd like to be in that space, but there's an assumption that if I want to have my own business, then I have to be that outgoing, gregarious, opinionated, high pressure salesperson kind of guy, just go after it. No, you don't. In today's environment, you can be introverted, soft spirited, shy, behind the scenes, not wanting to be around people. You can have a $200,000 a year business in a heartbeat because you can structure to fit what you know about yourself. Let's take an example. So if somebody is real outgoing and gregarious, the backslapping kind of person, they could be that insurance person that I described earlier. And they can go out and make their $200,000 because they're meeting with people, doing proposals, patting the dog on the head when they go in and playing with the kids. They're that works. Well, let's say that we have a person who is real introverted, who really cringes at having to get out and mingle with people every day like that. But they do a little bit of research and they realize that here's a birdhouse that's pretty unique. And I've done a little research on this online and discovered that people respond better to the red birdhouse than the green. Oh, and I've also discovered there's more response at 1995 than there is at 1295. Even though it seems counterintuitive, I know that. So they do a little bit of research. Now they're running Facebook ads and they're sending out, they're making $200,000 a year. They never see or talk to a customer. Very legitimate, very possible, both those scenarios. So we don't have to assume that, no, if I want to do something on my own, I have to change how God has made me. No, not at all.
Well, I appreciate that because I would say if we looked at all the list of vocations, which are endless, but there are some that if you take the introvert extrovert aspect, you say, man, so, and I'll own it myself as an introvert. There are some jobs I just don't see a way to do as being true to my introvert. It just takes this extroversion, maybe like that, being an insurance agent. Though there's also so many vocations where we can find an opportunity in the same role for both people. And, here as a, what do we want to label, influencer or whatever. I am the introvert, but I find I am much happier to talk here on a microphone to you than on stage in front of a lot of people. I don't enjoy that. Not that I never do it or don't want to ever, but it's not I'm not going to be the gallivanting speaker up on stage. I don't enjoy that. I like this. I can focus better. I can think better. And then even on the business aspect of thinking, you have to be able, as you said, be the gregarious person and manage and deal with all these people. I don't do that. You've told that story for years. You and Dave Ramsey cutting your teeth together, going through your stuff. And he's got God knows how many employees. You have a team, but you have them over here. I'm more like you in that aspect. And I tend to hire people who can manage for me because I'm not a good manager. So I'm going to hire somebody and pay them and they manage all the people that are involved, with the team. Even if I was a Dave Ramsey, aspect to hire somebody who's maybe I would probably not be CEO. I'm going to hire somebody else so they can do the management. I'm going to go over here and do what I do well. And I love that reality that we can still do so many of the similar roles, businesses, jobs, and find a way to do it and be, as you said, true to our, whatever, our nature, personality, style.
One of the things that we have are coaches. We have a coach training program. And one of the things we have everybody in there do, it's an inventory, and it really comes out of Gino Wickman's work with entrepreneurial operating systems. But to have people identify themselves as either a visionary or an integrator. A lot of people who are visionaries are not good integrators. A lot of people who are good entrepreneurs have a great idea, they get the ball rolling, but they're terrible integrators.
Explain integrator.
Well, it's somebody who creates the systems, who keeps
Okay.
track of the inventory, the new software programs you need,
Yeah, I'm horrific at
details.
that. Yeah.
Well, you are certainly a visionary more than an integrator. Recognizing that doesn't mean you need to change yourself. It means you now know what kind of people you need to bring in alongside of you to make this
Yes.
thing work. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about delegating and back to the, playing with the Tim Ferriss thing of take whatever thing and delegate it over here. The struggle that I have with normal traditional delegation is saying, okay, here it is. Here's the process. You do it. So I just offloaded that. I delegated that. I generally am not successful at doing that because I never created a process. I don't have a process.
Yeah.
I just want the result. So my perspective is generally, so instead of paying somebody $15 an hour and just say, hey, here's the process, you do it and delegate it, I'm going to pay somebody 20, $25 an hour who has a little more ability and say, here's the result, you figure it out. And if I hire the right person, especially if we go on the admin side or whatnot, I am continually blown away at this thing that is, to me, I think I'm going to have to pay $200 an hour. This is so complex, so hard. It's going to take them a month and they go do it in 15 minutes. They have joy in it. And I adore that. I adore that person exists, but I have to find that intuitive person who can create the process because I'm not even the person to create the process to delegate it as we normally think of delegating.
Yeah. Well, again, fortunately, you can find people like that
Yeah, absolutely.
where something that is difficult for you comes very easily to them.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
often assume that if it's difficult for me, it must be difficult for everybody. No, you need to find the person who thrives in that arena.
Yeah.
You were talking about, introversion, extroversion, and all that. I mean, there are people who are extremely successful today who are not outgoing. They're not good people managers at all. I mean, I'm sure you know Ryan Holiday. I've got here in my hand his book, The Daily Stoic. Ryan's very introspective, very introverted, very quiet. He's almost socially inept. But he thrives in doing this research that he does, and his writing is just amazing. So he can thrive exponentially, knowing who he is, but doing what he does so well, doing what he enjoys more than anything, living in his little farm in Austin, Texas, and petting his donkey, taking his kids out for a walk.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty about today's work environment. You can find a fitting application of work, no matter how unique you are.
Yeah. Well, so let's hit on the unique. Obviously, this overlays a lot of the same motives that we go into business for, but maybe pluck out some that are unique to that. And when I think about somebody, especially if you are coming from a traditional job environment or past, and the day comes and you're thinking about starting a business, becoming an entrepreneur. And my first thought is Michael Gerber, the E Myth, and having that entrepreneurial seizure. And he outlines some of the downfalls, of that. But pull out some of again, these initial errant reasons that sometimes, or errant motives that go awry, that we jump into business with. And you did, before we got on the call, Dad, you talked about people who you experience, you say, hey, I want to be a speaker, or I want to be an author, or you were talking about in podcasting. You said, I want to start a podcast, and put a survey out on Facebook. What should I start? What topic should I have? And you're going, holy smokes. Why would you start a podcast unless you have a specific topic to come forward with? Well, same way over here. I see that so often with entrepreneurs who say, well, I want to just do my own, I want to be an entrepreneur. What should I do? Can we say that you're off track right away, if that's the case?
If you stay there for more than 5 seconds, you're off track. If you're looking for an idea of what you could possibly do, wow, you need to be under somebody else's kind of structure and just do that well. So if we go with podcasting, when I started podcasting, there were about 30,000 podcasts. Today, as you know, there's over 1 million. There's a lot of competition there. And there are a lot of people. And of course, we know the average podcast has 7 episodes, which means they try it for less than 2 months. Gee, nobody's listening. How can I get an audience? And a lot of them come into that thinking, well, podcasting is hot. I know what Tim Ferriss is doing, and Joe Rogan, and Kevin Miller. I know what they're doing. I'm going to do that. And then they are going to pull something out of the air. Gee, what topic should I talk about? That's a recipe for disaster. You have a podcast, you write a book, not because you don't want to have a podcast already. You write a book because you have a message you cannot contain. You are that passionate about a message. Same thing with podcasting. So if you have that already, a clear focus, then it's easy. The logistics aren't that challenging to go ahead and choose what it is you're going to talk about. But that's the thing. There ought to be all kinds of indicators about what business would be a good fit for you, because it's an extension of something you already enjoy and know about. Same thing with podcasting or writing a book.
Well, so if we look at some of those reasons that people go, what would you say are the top ones? Because the first things that I think about, and some of this is my own bias, is you go into business because you think you can make more money, which we would agree with, that there is more wealth. I mean, you probably know some stat on, the majority of millionaires or wealthy, what's the percentage of them that are business owners?
Oh, high percentage. The work there that's most significant is still Thomas Stanley's work. Millionaire Next Door, The Millionaire Mind. He's got a lot of stats. The people who are doing their own thing, the people who are wealthy, such a big percentage of them are doing something that they just are purely passionate about.
Okay. But so business and wealth. And I would think another leading motive is autonomy. I mean, I witnessed that from, with you, and I don't think I took that on. I think it just happened to be my personality as well. I really struggle under somebody else's structure. I get frustrated. And even as I had, a real job for 2 years in the mortgage industry. And it's probably the best setup that I could have in a job with autonomy and the ability to create and to do the things that I do well. And yet still in that, I was really dissatisfied and wanted to do my own thing. So autonomy is another one, but wealth and autonomy. If we go back to Michael Gerber, who wrote the E Myth 30 years ago, I think it's the E Myth Revisited now. And talked about that entrepreneurial seizure of somebody who says, man, I'm doing this job for this company. I could go do it myself and make more money, have more autonomy, yada, yada. And again, from a motive standpoint, I don't want to say those are wrong or unhealthy, but of course we see a lot of people go into business for those reasons that then fall on their face, because going back, they haven't found that thing that they really care to come out and contribute to the marketplace. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. There are a lot of people in today's environment, especially in light of what's happened like the last year, people who today are what we call accidental entrepreneurs. They never really intended to be, but they're tired of being vulnerable to changing corporate policies or being laid off, 3 times in 2 years and all that. So they kind of back into it as a last resort. That's a tough kind of starting point. On the flip side, a lot of people go into being an entrepreneur doing something on their own because they want more time freedom and more open-ended income, which are legitimate reasons. But there are people who are working, 40 hours in a job, in a corporate job, and they're exhausted doing that. They can hardly put one foot in front of the other. And they think, wow, I want to get in my own business so I can work 20 hours a week. Well, 6 months later, they're in their own business and they're working 60 hours a week, but they're energized, they're
Mm-hmm.
vibrant, creative, and all. And it's like, wow, what's up with that? Well, the problem was not the amount of hours being put in, it's the problem that it was draining energy that didn't feel properly aligned for them in giving them joy and a sense of meaning and fulfillment. So when that's aligned, entrepreneurs are not known for trying to work their ways down to 4 hours a week. Not at all. Entrepreneurs tend to work a lot. I mean, at this point in my life, I've got some things kind of nicely in place. I still model working 50 hours a week. That's my goal, is work 50 hours a week,
Do
because
you go ahead? Go ahead.
I've
Go
been
ahead.
able to put more of my time into that zone of genius, the
Yeah.
things that I really truly enjoy. But I'm not looking to how can I work less and less and less and wean myself of this thing called work at all.
I was just going to question that working 50 hours because I have also seen that, and we have that depiction that I think is fair, though I'm going to push against it, of the entrepreneur who now actually works more hours, but they enjoy it. That I also experience, and I'll own it again for myself. That so how many hours a day do I spend here in this office? It's a lot. But then we'd have to define what kind of work am I doing? Because it may be writing a book, it may be doing a podcast, doing a show, it may be writing something like that. But I am also, and this is one of the primary reasons I'm an entrepreneur, I may get off this call and spend the next hour figuring out what Airbnb that we're going to stay at as we go skiing this next weekend. And I love that. And I do see entrepreneurs that they have so much of their life mixed in. So it looks like they worked a 12-hour day. But for me, I also went out and ran for an hour in the middle of the day, took a shower, had lunch out on the deck, and talked about life with my friends. And I spent some time figuring out the ski trip for the next weekend. And then I was on Amazon for God knows how long, figuring out this cool watch that I want to get that tracks my, endeavors. I have so much of my life wrapped up in it that you are generally not able to do at work because you're on the company's time. And so I sometimes, laugh because I see some of these entrepreneurs, they talk about, man, I work more hours than I ever did. Dude, you just spent 2 hours planning your ski trip on your computer at your office. Give me a break. You're having fun with life too. It's not all work, or at least not that revenue producing work, I should say.
Well, it's interesting in what you described there. There are things that we have the opportunity to do as entrepreneurs. I mean, this morning, I started the morning, I spent 2 hours reading a book while I was sipping my first cup of tea. It doesn't have anything to do directly with business or generating income. It has much more to do with personal development. But now I still can. So the question
I
is,
hear you. Yeah.
was I working
Yeah.
or was I playing?
Yeah.
But that's the beauty about this. When you
It
really
is.
have this figured out, there is no distinction. There's a quotation that I love to use. It's from James Michener, the writer, who says, "The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his information and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence at whatever he does, leaving others to decide whether he is working or playing. To him, he's always doing both."
Which I love because as you started talking about that, I thought, yeah, when I go out and do my run, which I'm going to do after this,
Yeah.
I will come back, if nothing else, just inspired and invigorated. And that
But
will
you'll
make
probably
my,
have ideas.
I was going to say a lot of times I will have an idea, but I was actually going to take that off the table, that even if I don't have this work related idea, I'm just going to come back feeling better, more vibrant, and I will engage in my work at a higher level than I would otherwise. Though, yeah, I often do come back, with an idea. That inspiration is so important. Now, the thing on play, I do poke at that sometimes because I know we talk about that, and I sometimes wonder if we do a disservice, especially to the younger generation, of saying that you need to find work that is just play. That, as you well know, when we have that work that we are doing that is really within our purpose. We really care about it. It really is our contribution, the book writing or whatever. There's plenty of hard work in that. There's times when I look, is this play? No, play. It feels like play when I'm out in the mountain bike trail. Right now I'm riding and there is huge joy, huge passion, huge fulfillment, but this is hard work. Uh, it's not always just playtime. So
All right.
I do. I mean, we can get the semantics with that, but sometimes I think that gets into that. Find the work you're passionate about. Debate on. Let's define what that's actually going to look like. Is it
Well,
going to be play every minute?
let's just pull out the obvious right here. You and I are here doing a podcast. We're having a conversation, father and son. We're reflecting back. We're having a lot of fun, just unpacking ideas. This is part of your business, part of
Yeah.
my business. You get ad sponsors that pay a whole lot of money to have exposure in your podcast like this that are inserted into that. I mean, that's pretty amazing to be able to do this and have this be part of your work.
Right. And I'm here telling everybody about Dan Miller, 48 days to the work. You already go to 48days.com. And you're not paying a dime for that. Well, you're taking your time. You could be doing something else. So it's a transaction. You're right. And this aspect of my work is more play. This is what
Okay.
I enjoy. This is play. Now I'm going to sit down and I don't know if the writing I would say is even hard work. I have a hard time focusing. So I have to discipline myself to cut out the distraction. And sometimes that's difficult for me. But once I get into the writing, it is joy. But there's plenty of things of as much as I can delegate, man, you still have to, provide something to the CPA. I haven't figured out how to get them to do 100%. And that I don't enjoy. Figuring out how to get somebody else doing a task that needs to be delegated off my plate. There's plenty in there that I look at, oh man, it's hard work. And sometimes I get decision as an entrepreneur, decision fatigue. I think a lot of people struggle with that. I think you get used to it as an entrepreneur, but I find that sometimes, and I have to watch that I don't take up all my decision-making activity in my work. So I have nothing left when I get home. I have to guard against that somewhat, but yeah, you're right. It is. It overlays so much during the day, how much work, how much play, man, it's pretty fluid and I go in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
On all of this, again, whether it's job, whether it's business, I do want to come back to on the motivation aspect. And you talked about this. You said, if you want to make $1 million, how can I help 1 million people? And
Yeah.
I brought that word up as, contribution, but we so often hear it. And I look at that, what problem can I solve? Or what desire can I fulfill? Now I put those out there. I think for me, business generally resides, any product, any service, anything that we're doing generally resides in those, and we can play with it. But I think there's some industries, some products, some services that behoove themselves more to their fulfilling a desire as a solving a problem. You talked about the guys mowing your yard. Do you look at that as the purchaser, the guy giving over his money and saying, man, I need these guys to come solve a problem, as opposed to I need them to fulfill a desire?
Well, it's both because I don't want my grass to be, knee high
Mm-hmm.
and weeds to be in the flower beds. So you could frame that as a problem, but
Uh-huh.
it's a pretty pleasant one to solve that in my eyes. But if you decide that you're going to go, work at Chick-fil-A and make $10 an hour, wow, what an opportunity to learn how to serve well. Where instead of if somebody says, thank you, hey, no problem, dude. No, not there. It's my pleasure. I mean, that has a transformative potential to make a difference in your life 30 years out from there. It doesn't matter what it is you do. There's no job so lowly that you can't learn and grow in the process of doing that well. So the key comes, what are you learning and what are you learning about how to make a bigger contribution while you're doing that? That's the real key. If you learn how to make a bigger contribution, your income is going to go up dramatically. If you are at the grocery store saying, do you want paper or plastic? There are a lot of other people that can kind of step into that role pretty easily. So your pay is going to be very low. If you are a cardiologist and you're going to open somebody's chest and put in a new heart valve, you're going to get paid extremely well because there's not a whole lot of people that can do that.
Right.
Most of us are in between those somewhere. So how much of a contribution can you make to the company, to the customers, to humanity, the world, whatever you want to frame? How much of a contribution can you make? How much of a difference can you make? And I'm thrilled and honored at the testimonials I get about something as simple as a book and having transformed somebody's life. And the testimonials about how it opened up new opportunities for them, change the direction of their life. Wow, that's pretty cool. Now that's just a $20 book, but those things spread. What if that person tells 200 people? Those people all buy a book. What if 10 of those purchase a course from us? What if 5 of those request personal coaching through our network? There's all kinds of ripple effects of the way those little contributions grow exponentially.
Yeah. So back to that contribution, and I'm going to pick out the one that you took, the grocery bagger, because I think we would look at that no harm, no foul to somebody who's doing that to make a buck and to start off the, their vocation or whatever, but not a very high skill job. But when you said that, for some reason, I thought about my wife. Let's say that for some reason she had to go and bag groceries. I know what her motive would be. She would say, well, I can't, how do you be the best baggage? Because I'll make sure I don't squish people's bread. But her main thing would be, I'm going to see how many people I can make happy. I can make smile. She'll do that. That's a thing of hers that she does wherever she goes, especially if she sees somebody who's kind of grumpy. Can I make them smile? Can I give them a little joy? She would do that as a bagger. And as you know, if she made that her motive, made that her reason for going there, her focus, she wouldn't stay in that position long. She'd be
That's
promoted
right.
before she knew what was happening.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
there's where I'm trying to elevate the motive. What is this reason that we are deciding to have for this work that we pursue?
I've got a 11-year-old granddaughter, not one of yours, but your niece,
Mm-hmm.
who makes it her goal to make people smile when she sees they're
Hmm.
unhappy. So recently there was a lady who had a pretty angry exchange, like in a parking lot. And she walked up to the lady and says, I really love the color of your sweater.
Hmm.
And the lady just stopped and just beamed. It changed her whole personality. Just that little compliment. But I love that. Somebody who has as their goal, see how they can make somebody else happy. That's going to open doors of opportunity and you won't be stuck at the bottom of the barrel.
Well, and even talking about the employee standpoint, and I want people to hear this, especially that this younger generation, because I have kids, who are now in their early 20s. And as they go out, and some of them are doing jobs to say, and they're looking at how can I stand out there to say, can you go? It's so unheard of. Can you go into that job application, into that interview with a perspective of what can you do for that company? What can you uniquely offer? Nobody's going to do that. They're going to go in there with the job thing and say, this is how I can fulfill that job to get the position. Will you pay me? How can I make your business a better place? I mean, it's so unheard of, which makes the opportunity so gigantic. I see you smiling. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, people sometimes assume they did an interview, they got the job. Now that part is over. No, you're interviewing every
Every
single
day.
day.
Yeah.
Every day you show up, the company is saying, is this a reasonable trade-off for us to have this person doing this task or service for what we're paying them? So it doesn't end. You're interviewing every day. The same thing is true if you have your own business. You don't just start it. Okay, now it's done. I could just go on easy. No, every day customers are saying, do I want what this person is offering? Is this still uniquely valuable to me? Every day. To me, that's really exciting to be called to that level of competence and excellence every single day.
Yeah.
I don't want something where I can just fade in the background and, well, now I just got a money machine. I mean, there's some things that you can put into systems and all like that, but there's still the daily call to excellence in how we serve people well.
I think this show should be a college requirement. Uh, I mean, but really, I mean, I'm so grateful that you gave me the perspective of motive of what are my reasons for the work that I go after that I'm able to impart to my kids. And I see them now doing things that they care about. You see all your grandkids, I think, gravitating towards that. But it's a void out there in the traditional world of most people's upbringing, of education, formal education. And well, that's why we need these messages. Thank you, Dad, for coming
Yes.
on
Oh
and
my.
talking about what you love and what you've helped millions of people uh, find in their lives as motive healthy motive, joy, passion, purpose in their work.
Well, and our time together here is an example of what we're talking about, where we're having fun, we're energized, we're creative, and this goes on, it never ends. It's not a to reach a destination, it's a continued process of doing exactly what we're doing here.
Yeah.
What a privilege. Thanks for the
Yes,
time together.
absolutely.